Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And just a reminder, my home base is wedon'tdie.com, where you can find so many good things, including our free Sunday gathering, inspirational service with medium demonstration included. If you'd like a free copy of my book, just scroll to the bottom of the page. You can enter your name and your email address. It says you get the first few chapters. The secret is it's the entire book. Lots more to discover, all at wedon'tdie.com. Our guest today is one of my most favorite people on planet Earth. We are welcoming back Dr. Mark Pitstick for our sixth time. Mark is an author, lecturer, counselor, a holistic chiropractic physician, a spokesperson, and research assistant for the Soul Phone Project, and the founder and director for the Greater Reality programs. Dr. Mark is also the author of many great books, including Soul Proof and the Afterlife Evidence, and has worked closely with an organization very dear to my heart called helpingparentsheal.org for nearly 11 years. Today, we'll catch up with Dr. Mark and talk about his latest passion, a Greater Reality healing program. You can find out more at his website, soulproof.com. Dr. Mark Pitstick, my friend, welcome back to We Don't Die.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Also, one of my favorite people on the planet. You are.
It feels good being back together. It really does. Sending you a big virtual hug. Absolutely. Mark, there's some people that are laying eyes or ears on you for the very first time today. Would you mind just giving us a little overview of who you are? And then we'll dive into what's happening now.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to it. You know, I'm almost 110 years old, so I've packed a lot in over the years. Yeah, so I would say to learn much more, visit soulproof.com/about. But just briefly, there's some good evidence from multiple sources that I never totally forgot. The really real place, home, spirit world. When I was 6 years old, my parents were showing me a beautiful sunset, and I told them it reminded me of God. And we were brought up Lutheran, so it was always God the Father this and God the Father that. And they only told me that many years later when I was in theology school. And then similarly, over the years, different psychics, mediums, people could see auras and energy were like, whoa, we don't get many of you in these neck of the woods. And I said, what are you talking about? And so basically they were just saying, I'm a rare type of soul that comes to earth, a teaching soul. I travel with an army with me, angels, guides, master teachers. And then I'm a blueprinter is the latest word for it. A type of soul that comes into an area that's ripe for a shift, a positive shift, an awakening, reaching that tipping point. And I do what I can. I'm getting teared up already just talking about it, to make that happen. And so that sounds like a cool job. That makes sense. So I was different as a child. I learned yoga before I even knew what yoga was. I just started doing the poses and then got the training when I was about 19. Same way with transcendental meditation when I was 20. So I've been doing everything for 50 years, yoga, meditation, healthy diet, serving others, started working in the hospitals at age 19. I was around people who died every shift. And so that made me decide then I was pre-med instead of med school, going to theology school, because I thought, gosh, isn't it important to know whether there really is life after death or not? Because I was not that far off from, hearing about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. And I'm like, what if this God and afterlife thing is just more baloney that humans are fed because they can't face the nature of reality? And so that began a quest then that brings me to this point. And I became a clinical psychologist after theology school, doctor of chiropractic, because I wanted to serve people with body, mind, spirit wellness. And it turns out each one of those skills is really important for different people to awaken, remember who they are, why they're here, who walks beside them, and let their light shine, do what they came here to do. So over the years then I've written 8 books, created 10 audio programs, been a radio show host a couple of times, and 25 of those best shows are available at my website, soulproof.com/radio shows free. Wayne Dyer, Michael Newton, I mean, people like that, before they passed on is priceless. And then others like Raymond Moody and Garen Schwartz and Anita Morjani, Carolyn Mace. And so I just serve however I can. You mentioned helping parents heal for 11 years. So that's what I do. And of course, it serves me and it serves my others. And people ask how I'm doing, and I say, really? I mean, obviously, this body isn't like it was at 71. I did have hair at one point, but otherwise, I feel the most happy, peaceful, fulfilled, grateful, loving, and in love I've ever felt in my life. So it's a wonderful place, and I wish that for everyone, and work as hard as I can to help people learn how to do that.
It's definitely a journey, and I think anyone who steps up to the plate spiritually, you can get your heart cracked open through grief and have an opportunity to grow and to learn, and then it's natural to serve and to continue to accumulate knowledge and then give it away and share, and great people come into your life. So I'm so grateful that we've connected, and I know my job really is to get the greatest people and their words and their products and their healing modalities and afterlife evidence to the greatest amount of people. So that's my job, and I love doing it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So, people who are watching or listening, if you scroll back probably a couple dozen episodes, you can watch or listen to the episode with Mark and some of the parents from Helping Parents Heal, from a recent book that had come out filled with signs from their children. Very, very, very special work. But what's your passion today? Let's talk about the greater reality healing and everything you've been cooking up, because like you and I have discussed, it's great to want to research the afterlife and all that, but the basis for all of it usually is a grieving heart. It's people that are looking for healing and help. So talk to us about what your latest is.
Sure. So I'll lay a foundation first. Dr. Gary Schwartz, PhD, former Harvard and Yale professor, now professor emeritus at the University of Arizona, and I started working together in 2014, and wrote a book in 2018 called Greater Reality Living. So we are very precise on our languaging because you understand that words shape our beliefs, and then our beliefs shape our actions. So we use the word greater reality to describe all that exists, how life is really set up. And then greater reality living proposed to people, okay, how would you live if you really knew how vast and wonderful life is and that you're an integral part of that? So that's some background. And then, as mentioned, I started working with Helping Parents Heal, and it's just such an extraordinary, as you know. I think they have 75,000 members now around the world, 30-some countries. We had a conference last August in Phoenix, over 1,100 parents. So for new viewers, these are parents who've had one or more children pass. And yet, many of them are what we call shining light parents. They're some of the most extraordinary, peaceful, loving, awakened. It's like they've had a near-death experience, and they provide so much hope for our world. Just a quick, amazing side note. So a couple people who were at the hotel for other reasons saw this conference, all the hugging and laughing and enthusiasm, and they said, how do I join this group? You all are having so much fun. There's so much love. I want to be part of this. And the parents said, no, you don't, and then I shared what the group is. So, but I consider that if these parents can do it, we all can do it. I mean, let's face it, we have all gone through tough times in our lives. And yet it turns out that those tough times are often or always chosen by our souls, and they have such exquisite potential for growth, for service, for enlightenment. So anyway, over the years, I had a number of people say to me, well, are there any groups like Helping Parents Heal, HPH, for the rest of us? What about those who have spouse pass, a sibling, a dear friend, a pet of any type? And I searched and I couldn't find any, but I was involved so much with so many things. It's like, I can't do it. But then a string of events happened, and it's really magical to look back. It started in October of 23. I started interviewing 130 of these Shining Light parents, and those videos can be watched free at the helpingparentsheal.org site, and then under YouTube videos, and you can watch all these interviews with these incredible parents who share how did they survive that. I mean, the worst of the worst, how they get to the dark night of the soul. How then did they feel called to start serving others, and how that was a powerful path for them to heal themselves. How did they detect their child's presence? And what are their personal beliefs or knowing about there being a rhyme and a reason to something even as seemingly tragic and senseless as a child's passing? So it's so powerful. Well, one of my first dads I interviewed was a guy named Jeff, and he told us about his son, Austin, who had just finished a master's in, I think, finance and business. They lived in Wisconsin. So the son, Austin, moved to Scottsdale, Phoenix, worked for about 6 months, and then went home for the holidays. It's winter now. And his parents had moved in the meantime, and Austin had never been to this new home. Visited first some of his buddies. They knew they were going to be drinking a few beers, so Austin got an Uber. He wasn't dressed. I mean, he'd been in Arizona for 6 months. He had just like a light jacket was all. Well, Wisconsin storm came in, horrible, lots of snow, ice, dropping down to 5 degrees. And the Uber dropped him off at the wrong house. He gave him the new address, but it was wrong. So he called Uber, and they came and they dropped him off at another house. It was the wrong house again. Well, by now it's starting to get late. The storm is really starting to set in, and his cell phone didn't work anymore. And so Austin started getting pretty scared, and he started going to houses and knock on the door. Please, can you let me in? I'm really cold. I need to call my parents so they can pick me up. My phone isn't working. No one would let him in. Then he got panicky, and he went out on the road and started like waving down cars, and no one would stop. Anyway, they found him the next morning huddled up, frozen to death. And I heard that. Well, you know, I was interviewing 6 people, and so I had to keep going. But of course, I mean, a year and a half later, it still just tears me up. I mean, so many of these deaths are needless, senseless. You know, they have a reaction to an antidepressant or Accutane, a drug they take for acne, but that one really hit me. Well, that night I woke up in the middle of the night. I sat up and just like this, and I said, what am I feeling? And I thought, rage. I am feeling rage at being on a planet where people could treat somebody else like that. My gosh, really? You wouldn't try to help somebody in the middle of a storm? I told Dr. Schwartz that, and he started crying. And he said, Mark, we are going to find the silver linings to this. We are going to, said, this is the kind of story that can motivate people, can activate people and say, enough is enough. You know, I'm going to brighten the corner where I am, as the old church hymn goes, and I'm going to make a difference. And enough of that, of us do that, we can change the world. So after that, I started having a series of dreams. For example, one was I was going to see Wayne Dyer speak. Well, Wayne had been passed on for like 10 years at that point. But I was going to see Wayne Dyer at a weekend conference, but Wayne became ill, and they contacted me to see if I would do the conference instead. And I said, sure, you know, I mean, all this is so in my head, I could do it at the drop of a hat. And so I did. It was very well received. And the next day I got a call from the David Letterman show, which again, the David Letterman show is in the past. And they said, Mark, we'd love to have you on and share this program, this information, because we really think it can help change the world. And these dreams are so vivid. I woke up, I just remembered every detail. So something seemed to be building. Now, so I finished those 130 interviews. As you know, we produced the book, Shining Light Parents Speak, and that was every one of those parents like gave me a gift, an energetic gift. And it just helped me advance so much. So now we're at the conference last August, and it was the first day of 5 days. I was speaking to about 800 parents in this huge room, 30-foot high ceiling, and I'm discussing this very topic. Could it be that a meta blessing of all your kids passing is that they, as evolved souls, volunteered for the possibility, it's not set in stone, otherwise, why go through all this? But for the possibility of passing at a young age in some strange way, for example, there are heavy metals and chemicals and too many prescription drugs, vaccinations, nutrient deficient food, etc., affecting their brain, and then their evolved souls and their body and brain are offset. And so that's why oftentimes they become addicted. They drink drugs. Elizabeth Boyson, president of Helping Parents Heal, and I figured out that about 1/3 of the kids for these Shining Light parents passed by suicide and or overdose. And of course, it's hard to tell what was purposeful and what was accidental. Suicide's the number 2 cause of death in young people aged 15 to 35. And we're just like, what in God's name? So I said, could it be that these kids are like canaries in a coal mine? They're warning the rest of us because, again, they're most likely very evolved souls, so they are more sensitive to unhealthy circumstances with their food, air, and water. And so they're trying to warn the rest of us. And then the parents of these kids who just say, I'm going to find the silver linings. I'm going to honor my child. I'm going to find some meaning. I'm going to help in any way I can. And many of them are doing this. I said, think of the emphasis or the impact of that, all these kids and all you parents. Well, just then I glanced up at the ceiling and I saw, just as clearly as I'm seeing you, and I'm usually not clairvoyant, I have a little bit of clairaudience, I saw thousands and thousands of smiling faces. And again, I'm getting emotional again. Little babies, little kids, teenagers, young adults, all smiling and clapping and sending to me, good, they're finally getting it. And these faces went above the ceiling, through the sky, and up into the clouds. And I mentioned, and it's like they were seated in tiered seating, like stadium seating. And I mentioned this to my fiance, Andy, who's an evidential medium. She trained with Mavis Patilla, and she said that Mavis taught that oftentimes when there's a big gathering, souls, post-material persons will show up in like a tiered seating like that. So that was interesting. So anyway, here I am in this presentation. I see that, and I just said, whoa, that's heavy. And I looked back down, and I went ahead with my presentation because I had things to share. Well, right afterwards, a mom came up to me and said, you are so right about helping others and how that can make a difference and how our kids make a difference. She said, I'd like to share my story. I said, sure. Here's her story. She's a single parent. Her 18-year-old son was her whole life, and he got killed. His body got killed. As you know, you don't die. We don't die. But his body died in this car wreck, and she was devastated. And he was her whole life. So she saw through the cremation, but she didn't even contact anybody except immediate family. And 3 days later, she was sitting on the floor in her apartment with a bottle of vodka in one hand, a bottle of pills in the other. And she said, I'm out of here. I'm going to go where my son is. Just then, her son's cell phone rang. And she said, well, I might as well answer and see who's calling him. And it was his best friend who had just flown in unannounced to surprise him. She hadn't even told her son's best friend. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry to tell you, he passed on in a car wreck. So the guy starts crying. She said, come on over, let's cry together. So they did. But then after a while, they started telling stories because this young man who passed was such an amazing soul. And they were able to feel, in addition to their pain and sadness, gratitude for having known him for those years. Well, at the end of the day, they were laughing and hugging, and it was time for the guy to go. And the mom said, I just want you to know that you saved my life, because when you called, I was getting ready to pass by suicide. Well, the next morning, mom woke up and she had enough wherewithal to know that she was going to have to take some action steps or she could end right back up on that floor. So she called a local animal rescue center and asked if they needed volunteers. They did. So she went right in. And the very first person who came in was a young lady who looked like she'd been crying, obviously going through a tough time. The mom started talking to her some. Yeah, I've been going through a tough time myself. The young lady said, can I see your most friendly, lovable dog? And mom said, sure, brought it out. She said the young lady hugged this dog for 30 minutes and cried over it. And the mom's talking to her, and they spent a couple hours together. When they get done, the young lady said, okay, I'll take the dog. And she said, I want you to know that you saved my life. Because when I came in here, I was planning on suicide this evening. I just wanted to touch and get some love from someone before I did. And I heard that, I was like, oh my God, that's it in a nutshell. That's all you have to do. We want to change the world, make the world a better place, Michael Jackson. Just do what you can, help one person. So then 2 days later, we had a meeting. Dr. Gary Schwartz is there, his wife, Rhonda, who's the head research medium, our team of evidential mediums, Suzanne Giesman, Mark Anthony, Tina Powers, space his first name, Jamie Clark, and my fiance, Andy. So we're all sitting around because we check in a couple times a year in person or on Zoom. And one of them said, is anybody getting from, quote, the other side, that they're working just as hard as we are to create peace on earth? And everybody said yes. And then Dr. Gary Schwartz and Rhonda shared that they have been receiving that message from the A-team. So this is an interdimensional effort. So I'm like, wow, is this message clear enough in my face or what? So the next week, I gave a webinar for HPH, and I was sharing that theme. Could it be that this will help change the world? And then I thought, oh my God, I just remembered what happened at that conference, seeing all those faces in the sky. And I had forgot because of just how fast and so much is going on. And so I told them, Elizabeth interrupted me at the end of that. And I thought, well, that's kind of rude. I'm not quite done. And she said, that's what Morgan's been telling me ever since I passed. Morgan's her son who passed hiking the Himalayas. And that's what led to this being birthed, or Mark Ireland. And she said, after he passed, because she can hear him very well telepathically, he's been saying, Mom, working with us kids is going to save the world. And she said, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the cause and effect. How could that work? And now you're describing this, Mark. And I said, we've been working together for 10 and a half years. How did this never come up before? So that sets the stage. And let me have a sip of tea while you ask something.
Oh, I'm just going to relax here into it. I think we'll do a shout out for helpingparentsheal.org. And even if you're not a parent, they've got a great YouTube channel. And there's so much more that Dr. Mark's going to clue us in on some of the resources he has at soulproof.com, articles you can read, and soon to be videos. All right, you are refreshed. Back over to you.
I was hoping you'd talk longer. My nose is running. I got tears in my eyes. My own stories are tearing me up. All right, so now, so I was working away at a little. Oh, and then also, each webinar I would give or each interview I would give, people would ask the same question: is there any HPH-like event for the rest of us? Like I mentioned, I'm like, no, there's not. And so, 2 days before Thanksgiving, now we're in 2024. Uh, I woke up in the middle of the night with this giant download. It was just like, take notes. And so I'm 6 pages of notes, and it was how to create this, what I'm calling greater reality healing program. And I completed out there. It's an article number 82 at soulproof.com. It's 62 8 by 11 pages, Word doc pages. I know, because it's
Wow.
so comprehensive. Well, keep in mind, it's for all sorts of relationships. It's for any sort of perceived loss. And I say loss because it turns out we don't really lose anything. I mean, what's really going on, as you know, is a dance of energy, consciousness, love, light. So nothing is really lost, but it sure can seem like it to us as humans. So not only when a loved one passes, person or pet, but financial losses, um, relationship breakups, which can be, very difficult. As a person loses their health, as they get older, as they lose their independence and mobility, any of those kinds of, what I encourage people to use is shifts or changes. In other words, the language again. So if you say it's a loss, you're going to feel horrible. I lost something. But if you say it's a shift, it's a change. And then the other reason it's so long is that, as you said earlier, deep grief, sadness can be such a block, and it can keep us from seeing the great news. I don't know if you remember the rock opera, Jesus Christ Superstar. So, yeah, Jesus is saying, the Pharisees are telling the crowd to disperse, and they're all excited because Jesus is reminding them about the nature of reality. No one really dies. You are one with the Father. There's nothing to fear. Let your light shine. Don't hide it under a bushel. Love your neighbor and yourself. Just the basic stuff that if we do, we'd have heaven on earth across the board. So Pharisees they're trying to break up the crowd and the soldiers. And Jesus said, why waste your breath yelling at the crowd? Nothing will stop their shouting. If every voice were stilled, their song would still continue. The rocks and stones themselves would start to sing. So that's how really it is for a person who's clear, which is a Scientology term, and I don't know hardly anything about Scientology, but I really like that term. You get clear, you become awakened. You see the big picture of life. Your spiritual eyes open. You get saved. You see the light. There's all kinds of ways to put this. But when you do, then you realize it is all good. It is all God. And you let fear go and you enjoy this journey and you share your greatest gifts. But there can be blocks, and there's so many different types of blocks. I mean, my God, 1/3 of women have been sexually abused. So many people have been physically abused, judged, prejudiced, hurt in different ways. And then you have a group of people who are brought up in fundamentalist churches, what Raymond Moody calls funny mentalist churches, very fear-based. And so, they grew up thinking, well, if I don't believe a certain way, if I do certain things, I'll burn in hell forever. What a horrible thing. I mean, talk about schizoid thinking. God loves you beyond all bounds. But here's a list of things if you do, you'll fry in eternity forever. And this is the religion is the institution we've entrusted for teaching people about the nature of life, death, and the afterlife. And so much of it's just wrong or limited. So that's why the article's pretty long, because it addresses all those things that I've learned over the last 50 plus years working with tens and tens of thousands of people that I know are important So not everybody will need everything in there, but there is something for everyone, and really has evidence-based information and then holistic resources to truly help everyone awaken and do what they came here to do. So there's 4 levels of this program. First, the article, which is in place. Again, article number 82. Second, videos, free videos. It took 18 30-minute videos for me to describe all this, and those are in the process of being adding graphics and getting them on the website. The next is that I met yesterday. We are going to have greater reality healing online meetings. I put the word out, talk about magical. And this is how I know that really humanity is ready for this. It's time. It's going to happen. It's happening now. I put the word out on a Saturday afternoon that I could use some volunteers to help me launch this program and some others that I won't confuse people by sharing the other programs now. But within 24 hours, I had 2 executive coordinators who I've worked with for years in the Soul Phone Foundation, both of whom have multiple masters, and they're just genius women. 14 coordinators, 60 volunteers. So I have 3 coordinators for each of the 4 groups I created, 15 volunteers. Anyway, I had this team in 24 hours. It's magical. And I'm talking people like, well, I have 2 PhDs and I do volunteer work. And one guy said, I was a diplomat for the Canadian government for 30 years. I'm like, no, you're not qualified. It's just amazing who Spirit Universe supplied. So we're going to have then these online meetings. We'll have them twice a month. We'll have different times for people in different time zones. Everything's free. There's no registration, no membership. We just want to make it real easy. And then as soon as people feel called to do this and they're trained, start in-person local groups where, say, 10 people can get together, work on their own high-level grieving versus, what passes for grief groups in some circles.
It's such good news. I know throughout time, there's been different people that have tried to create local chapters of things that people that wanna be part of it, so I'm so grateful that we're talking today, and that we'll have an opportunity to share, and that everybody listening and viewing right now, keep an eye on soulproof.com, find article 82, right? And then Greater Reality Healing, and just keep an eye on the webpage because those videos will start coming, depending on when you're listening or watching. They might already be there. And then these groups, is there a way people can enter their name and email address to be included? Do you have a mailing list as of yet, or could that come?
The best action step is to sign up, if you haven't already, for one or both newsletters. And those are free at soulproof.com, also soulphone.org. Dr. Schwartz is very excited to have all these programs being part of the Greater Reality umbrella, and sees it as a natural need given what's going to be happening with the Soul Phone project later this year. And we can talk about this a bit. So yeah, just sign up for those newsletters, and then you'll know when the groups are going to meet, the Zoom number, the time, so that you can show up. So what I'd like to share next is, I can't possibly review all the aspects of the Greater Reality Healing Program, but I would like to share a few. And one is that for people to know the great news. We mentioned that religion was tasked with teaching us about the nature of reality, the big picture of life. And in general, there are different religions and different denominations, but in general, I'm going to give religion a D+ grade, and fundamentalists get a F-. Is that even a grade? Can you get a F-?
That's the bottom of the barrel.
So, so that's why Dr. Schwartz and I worked really hard and looked at all the evidence out there and said, okay, really, what can we say now about life, how life is set up? And so we created what's called the Great News. This is listed in article number 19, and it's 10 indications about the nature of reality. The first two are proven by scientific research as well as clinical data. And that is that no one really dies, consciousness continues, and that we can communicate with our loved ones now. We don't have to wait till we pass on and have a reunion. And I know you're all about those too. No big surprise there. But then there's all sorts of other great news that hasn't been scientifically researched yet, but there's a lot of clinical data. And when I say clinical data, I mean research by physicians, psychologists, university professors in the fields of near-death experiences, afterlife contacts, deathbed visions, terminal lucidity, life between lives. There's 10 different categories like that. And things like we each come here with special purposes, special reasons. And when we share that even a little bit, our lives are so much more wonderful. And if we don't, we feel this discontent, this creative discontent, malaise, boredom, depression, because we're not doing what we came here to do. We're not in the flow of spirit. Multi-location, to me, this is personally one of the most exciting. And in all these topics, I provide evidence for it. For example, multi-location, I discussed that in article number 75. But there are actually scientific research as well as clinical that only about, on average, 40% of our soul's energy is needed to manifest and have a earthly experience. I say earthly experience because you realize this isn't even going on. What we think's going on, you're separate, we're solid, there's a table. That's not even it. That's what the limited brain and senses perceive. But really, it's a dance of energy. It's God breathing in and out. It's love manifesting. But if we use the model of, okay, we're having this earthly experience, only about 40% of the totality of our energy, our consciousness, our life force is needed to have this human experience, which means a greater proportion of who we are can be in other times and places, other slices of life, and can be home. And this is part of what I share with these parents. I say, I know you miss your kids so much, but really, just as real as this, you and your child could be together right now, back home, watching all this and cheering you on, rooting you on to remember the big picture, do what you came here to do, fulfill this soul's plan. And so you can have this great life the more you remember that. So that's the great news. And again, there are 10 indications. And another is that we each have higher powers, what I call my spiritual support team, angels, guides, master teachers, who are here to help us. Now, there's a lot of what we call experiential evidence for that. That is, people have firsthand experiences. There's good clinical evidence for it. People who had near-death experiences come back and tell about their angels. But there's a little bit of scientific research, at least from Dr. Schwartz's work, and I share a bit about it. So years ago, an angel named Sophia appeared and volunteered to help out. Dr. Schwartz wrote about this in his book called The Sacred Promise. So he was using space and spectrographic analysis to capture their energy. And so for everything, we have control groups. So baseline, you see this photo, and it's just kind of black and gray. Then he would ask a human, a post-material person who had passed on, to project her energy into it. This is Susie Smith in this case. And it would brighten like a nice orangish red colors. And then he had Sophia do it, the angel, and it was intense white, pure white light. And we're like, whoa, that's interesting. He shares these actual photos in his book. Well, several years ago, when we were working on what we call the Tesla coil device to use as a switch, we've moved on and we have something much better now. But I was working with a team of 4 people, and 3 of them were post-material persons. They were on Earth. And then the 4th was Sophia. And all this is, standardized. So I have to read the same thing to every one of them. Thank you for being here. The object of this experiment is we ask you to put your hand in. So I'm sitting here, and what we call test pilot sitting beside me to my right. So I had done this with the other humans. So I turned like this towards Sophia, and all of a sudden I saw a beautiful woman with blonde hair in this radiant gown. All 3 of these images I'm going to describe happened in a fraction of a second. Next, I saw this swirl of light and colors. And then next, I saw this huge angel whose head was near the ceiling with huge wings. And it was just like, bink, bink, bink. And I went, whoa, that's pretty heavy. I told Dr. Schwartz about it later. He said, that's very interesting. You're the 3rd person who has described Sophia exactly the same way.
Wow.
Yeah. And keep in mind, for all these experiments we did, we had baseline, nobody's in the room. So what you see is kind of like a flatline EKG. And then when they put their hand, in this case, into a Tesla coil, and we measured the difference for post-material persons, there is definitely a spike, with Sophia much higher than what humans can do. So that's some early scientific research. We look forward to the day when we can scientifically prove the existence of angels, and then also the light, the ground of all being. But we're not quite there yet. So the more people know this great news, how life is really set up versus fear-based crap we've been taught, the more they're like, oh, okay, well, I can relax. There's really nothing to fear. There really nothing is. And I'm sure you know people who were in the most dire situation. I mean, they're paralyzed from the neck down. They were raped. They are dying. Their body's dying. They have multiple levels. I worked with a woman recently. She had to go to work. There was a carbon monoxide leak in their home, and her husband, their son, and their dog all passed. She came home and they were all, and she contacted me and she said, it's been 9 months now. I'm doing better. I want to start helping other people. How can I do that? And I'm like, oh my God. You think you might be an evolved soul? Some people they'd still be in bed, can't get out. So that's just how powerful this great news is. Another thing that really gives people hope and can help them journey from deeply grieving to brightly shining is knowing about the Soul Phone Project. And there's a whole website, soulphone.org, about it. But briefly, Dr. Schwartz has worked on proving life after death, survival of consciousness, as scientists call it, for 25 years. And now he says, speaking as a scientist, I can say without a doubt that life continues after bodily death. And we're planning on later this year public announcements with a professional PR person, a firm, announcements that life after death has been scientifically proven, and then demonstrations of the existing technology, which will probably still be a switch, but will provide yes/no answers from a post-material person. So this will be like that moment, Sandra, in the movie Ghost, where Demi Moore saw the penny floating in the air, and she went from anger and sadness to, oh my God, this is really real. Her boyfriend, Patrick Swayze, is really there and pushing that penny up, as Whoopi Goldberg is saying. So if any of your viewers aren't as old as me, watch the movie Ghost. It's wonderful, or watch it again. But that is what we anticipate will be for many people, because as you know, there are many people who have awakened, have a spiritually transformative experience from just one good medium reading. I mean, just a couple details, and they're like, oh my God, it's really true. And they're energized and they're off and running. They are profoundly, lastingly change, just like near-death experiencers. Well, then they become a force for light. And as we get enough people like that, that's how our world's going to change. So I encourage people then to visit that article, 82, see the great news. And then the last thing I'll share is that lots of information about how you can fine-tune yourself, because it's clear to me after all the clinical work I've done over the years that more evolved souls, and Michael Newton, PhD, estimates about 15% of the population right now is intermediate to advanced souls. They're more sensitive. They're often empathic. They can feel the energy of others. Their transcendent source of consciousness, call it their soul, needs to be congruent with their brain-based consciousness. And when it is, they're a force. Life makes sense. They're successful in all parts. But if they're eating, crappy food and not taking care of themselves and so on, there's that offset. And then that's when they can really get tripped up. So it's so important for more evolved people to really toe the line. We can't get away with what beginner souls can. Beginner soul like eat a pound steak and drink a case of beer, and they feel pretty good the next day. If you and I did that, we wouldn't be able to walk. So lots of information about how you can fine-tune the temple of your soul, and then how you can release these old wounds, misinformation from previous religious teachings, misinformation from cultures, so that you're thinking for yourself and trusting your inner discernment. All right, I'm going to shut up again. Please ask something.
Have a drink. Have a drink. Well, I'm just excited because you're not here selling a book. Not that you don't have great books, because you do, but it's pure. It's from the heart. You can feel the people who want to get involved. You have zillions of articles at soulproof.com, videos to come. And this is just mankind helping mankind because of the greater reality. And I just feel the teamwork from both sides of the veil. And we're in need of people shining that light. And I think for each one of us, when we have that shift, also known as loss, to look at it as an opportunity. And yes, there's help through grief. Yes, it's painful. Yes, that's a journey. You're not alone. There's healing available. But then, like that woman within 9 months, to how can I serve? I know for me, making a difference for others gave me my life back. Yeah. And it is something where it's hard to do sometimes. The great Zig Ziglar has a great quote that you get everything you want in your life by helping other people get what they want. Right. Something like that anyway. So it's really directing our vision on understanding there's a bigger picture going on, and then being of service. So everybody listening and watching, we need your light to shine, and just being that living example really can help bring other people into the fold. So,
yes, and it can help people make sense of the seeming chaos around them, and that can be the turning point for their personal healing and transformation, and then helping others and reaching our world. So yeah, my meta message is that we're there. Everything is in place. When I started working with these parents, I realized, oh my gosh, that's along with the 15 percenters, more evolved people, the near-death experiencers. Now you add these shining light parents, and other people have had spiritually transformative experiences. We have everything in place. It's like we just need kind of a program, a formula to follow. And the other thing is for people to know there's hope. And that's why I share all these recent developments. There's another article, number 125, called The 8 Developments that I identified. For example, there are 20-some organizations like the Shift Network, Humanity's Team, IONS, IANS, Gaia, etc., that have a large membership, and they provide so much information. So really, everything is in place. Now, when I say this, more evolved souls are going to recognize that. In fact, that could be like a preset message that when they hear it, they're like, okay, time for me to awaken, time for me to get with the program. So you mentioned my books. So the free services are the 125 articles, the 25 radio shows, and then the newsletters. Yes, I have the books and audio programs. They're $15 each or less, which isn't much, but in some countries that's a lot. And so my policy is that anyone who can't afford it or anyone who runs into trouble, I've been hearing from some people from the Middle East lately, and they're like, we'd love to have your books, but we can't use our exchange, we can't use our credit cards and so on to work with the American system. I said, we'll just send them to you. I'm talking about digital copies. And so that's my policy. If for whatever reason you can't afford it or you can't work through the transition, email me, mark@soulproof.com, and we'll send you 2 at a time free digital copies of the audio programs or the books. And the audio programs include things like holistic breathing, 45 minutes to get rid of these old wounds and just build up sadness and so on. Ask Your Soul, Angels in the Light, where you turn down the brain, because in Hinduism there's a saying, the brain is a wonderful slave but a horrible master, because the brain perceives much less than the 1% of reality, yet it thinks it knows everything. So one of the keys to awakening and having this life that we envisioned we came here to have is to periodically quiet the brain via meditation, walk in nature, centering practices, techniques like this, deep hypnosis, relaxation, that quiet the brain so your inner self then gets a chance to speak up. And also you can hear your guides and your angels. So same way with pre-birth planning technique, past life regression. I mean, there's just all sorts of wonderful audios I created in response to needs from people over the last 50 years. So, and then the last thing I'll share is that, and I don't know if I can keep doing it, but so far I can, that if somebody has specific questions and challenges, email me. Again, mark@soulproof.com. Give me the details. What are you suffering with? What are your challenges? Because usually in 5 minutes, I can put together a program. Read these articles, read this book, use this audio program, and get back with me in 60 days. We'll see how you're doing, and we'll go from there. It's a variation of the medical doctors 50 years ago say, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. So I'm glad to do that as long as I can. It may come a point where I can't, and that's free. And one reason I do that is that there are so many people that are just that close to having a breakthrough. They think they're having a breakdown. I just sent a message to a physician this morning in England, and she's like, nothing's working. I don't have any friends. My husband hates me. I can't find a good place to work. I feel like giving up. I'm like, and yet her language is so evolved. She said, I've been on the spiritual path for 10 years. I'm like, darling, you are that close. You ever hear the saying that light always seems the darkest just before the dawn? And I said, I am glad to take a few minutes to help you just get that right combination. Then boom, you're sharing your light with others, and I had a little part to play in that. So everybody out there listening, keep hope alive. There is so much reason to be excited, enthusiastic, inspired, empowered. Make sure you see those resources, and for the healing, especially number 82, and let me know if you have any questions.
Mark, wow. Thank you. I didn't need to say much, and I'm grateful I didn't, because no wonder you're on here the 6th time. There'll be
Some really
7,
good green tea.
8, 9. Yeah, I bet that keeps you going. So we can sign up at soulphone.org, but all the articles are at soulproof.com.
Right.
And your books and audios and all of that. Mark, any last words for our time together today?
Yeah, it's time. The old saying, life, We know life is tough at times, but this is just the kind of thing that we as souls signed up for. Like you came here to do this, and we can do it, especially together. That's one of the keys in the healing program. It's like lean on others when you need it, just like the old Bill Withers song, Lean On Me. And so, yeah, go through there, find the keys that work for you so that you are free. Again, Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. When you open your eyes, I just love stories. I've collected them over the years. The Buddha said to, when he was at his height of enlightenment, and kings and queens traveled from different continents to see him. And they would say, are you God? And he'd say, no. Are you an angel? No. Are you a great prophet? No. Then what are you? He said, I am awake. And that's the whole thing. Just open your eyes, awake. Don't listen to fear. Don't watch too much news, negativity, sensationalism. I'm giving you the formula here and all the products. I wish somebody, I wish this would have been available when I was 21, but I created it so others can enjoy it.
And it will go on throughout eternity. Really, that ripple effect will go on and on. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being our guest today.
What a wonderful day. Way to spend Valentine's Day, and remember, it's all love and light.
That's right. We are recording this on Valentine's Day 2025, and I feel the love. A reminder to everyone, go to soulproof.com. There's a ton of things to investigate, and article number 82 for the healing, and keep an eye out for those videos. Also on my website, which is wedon'tdie.com, you can join our community every Sunday at 2 p.m. New York time. We have our free Sunday gathering inspirational service with a medium demonstration included. We have 150 to 200 people from all over the world that come. It's a very real community, even though we are all over the world, but people need people, just as Mark was talking about. And in time, there'll be more groups that get together in person discussing these things. But we have a wonderful community, and please join us. It's really wonderful. That's our free Sunday gathering. And you can have a copy of my book, We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Just enter your name and email address at the bottom of the page at wedon'tdie.com. It says you get the first 2 chapters. It's the whole book. If you are somebody experiencing grief, chapter 10, that's where I would start, because it gives a little understanding of the grieving process, why we grieve, things to work through the pain, and so much more. WeDon'tDie.com. So with that, I'm Sandra Champlain. I am always so happy to be your host on We Don't Die. I do believe that life is an education for the soul, and that our lives here are so important, that we are shining lights, we are connected, we set our eyes on making a difference with others. Understand there is a greater reality, a much bigger picture. Be awake, be present. Your loved ones are around you. You are loved and you are important. So I really want to thank you for listening or for watching, and we'll see you again soon.